Okay, in this video lecture, we're going to talk about Chapter 11, which is about geography and exploring the whole world through interdisciplinary instruction. So I want you to think about what geography makes you think of. I want you to pause the video right now and just write down some things that you think of when you hear the word geography. Also, pause and tell me how geography affects your everyday life. Just brainstorm and write a couple of things down, and we'll talk about them in the class in the next session discussion. So geography is for life. That struck me as kind of interesting when I was reading this chapter, and the author in our textbook says, you know, it's lifelong, it's life sustaining, it's life enhancing, and we'll talk about really what that's all about throughout this lecture. So geography is defined as the study of what? What kind of aspects of human existence? It's the physical aspect. So talking about the environment, we're talking about maps and the physical aspects of the earth. And so we'll talk about all of those things. This chapter deals with several sets of information, and we'll try to make sense of all of that. We have the 5 things of geography. We have 5 skills, geography skills that we want students to be able to master. And then we have 6 essential elements. And we'll talk about all of those, and then we'll make sense of them in our class discussion and how they interact together. But the 5 things of geography, number 1 is location. And it answers the question, where is that? Pretty much you can point it out on a map. That's the location. Number 2 has to do with location, but it's place, and it's a little bit more descriptive than just telling where it is. It's what is it like to be there. We can use our senses to make a description of that place. And then number 3 is the relationships within places. In other words, what do people have to do to live there? What kind of human environment interactions going on? What kind of settlements do they have to have? What kind of structures or shelters? What kind of food would they eat? Number 4 would be relationships between places. In other words, why do people move from one place to the other? Even not just people, but goods and ideas, and even migration of animals, those type of things. And number 5, the regions. How are places alike? How are they different? So it's a compare and contrast type situation. So in order for students to become geographically informed, they need to have the interaction of 3 different types of knowledge. They need to have subject matter, which is what we just talked about, and those 5 things. They need to look at it from 2 different perspectives, though, from a spatial perspective, which deals with maps and knowing your place in space, and then from an ecological perspective or from the environment. And those are 2 different things, and we'll talk about those. But also, they need to have those geographic skills, which is what we're going to talk about next. The skills really offer a framework for you to help to develop your geography lessons. So as a student, as a teacher, your students need to be able to answer questions or ask questions about geography, like where did that happen and why did it happen there? And that deals with location, where on the map, but why there also deals with place. Describe it. Why was it there and not another place? Number 2, they need to be able to acquire geographic information in a variety of ways. So they need to have hands-on activities that involves research and field work, taking pictures, going to the internet. And I want you to, in the presentation that's posted on the website, I want you to go in and just look around these 3 projects. These are on the National Geographic website, and they deal with students gathering information and then showing their work through a collaborative project and posting their information. And we'll talk about these in class as well. The next skill is now organizing. So you have been asking questions, you're gathering information. Now you need to know how to organize that information. And those projects, Budburst and FieldScope, they incorporate charts and graphs and compare information that help you with the next skill, which is analyzing that information. Why do geographers even gather data? It's because they want to look for relationships and connections and patterns so they can use that information and make good choices and good decisions. And then the last thing is you want kids to be able to then answer their geographic questions. after the research. They need to be able to come to a general conclusion about what they have found. So I want you to stop and pause the video right now and talk and think about what types of projects lend themselves to practicing these types of skills. How can students then showcase their learning? What kind of presentations or projects would they be doing? The next thing we're going to talk about, so now we have the 5 themes, we have the 5 skills that we want to help students master, and then we have 6 essential elements. And I know there's lots of different groups of information, but I want you to think about this set of information as how to structure your units, how to think about themes and units. So we will go through each one of these in turn and talk a little bit more specifically about them. The world in special terms, I want you to think about all about maps. Maps are ways to represent different types of information. It doesn't have to just be, where are the states located and all those type of things. It can be mental maps. It can be spatial organization of people. And I'm going to go to this one. This is on the National Geographic site. And on this site, you can actually show kids how people are distributed along the Earth's atmosphere, the Earth's surface, with a population density map. This is called MapMaker Interactive, and this is one of the ones that you're going to look at. But up here on Human Systems, Population, and Culture, and then if you go to Population Density, it will actually show you on this map, if I click off of that, it'll show you on this map how dense a population is. So I zoomed in there. So I am now looking at Wisconsin, but I'm going to zoom out just a little bit more. And so a map like this can actually help you talk to your students about, why would people be more likely to settle here in Chicago on, the shore of Lake Michigan than they would way over here in the middle of what we know as a desert, because this over here is Nebraska and New Mexico. And so you can start to have those conversations with students about why people move to places that they do. So I want you to think about this. If you've taught your lesson, or if you've seen other people teach lessons on this, how did they do that? How did they teach it? We'll talk about that in class. This is one way that I used to teach in my class when I taught first grade. We mapped, we had a postcard exchange, a postcard and leaf exchange actually, and so we exchanged leaves with other classrooms across the country, and then we would map them on our map that was just on the wall, and we'd put little things about the leaves and where they came from, and so that gave my students a good visual of where the different leaves were in the United States. Another neat idea is to read books about places around the world. This one is wonderful, How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World. The person who's gathering the ingredients in this book actually travels to each one of the countries to gather that ingredient. You can map those places as you read the book. You can also just read books about other countries and map those as you read them throughout your semester. There's lots of great books given in the textbook. Another way to talk about maps is mental mapping, and you can read about these type of things, but you can have students do maps of imaginary worlds, or you can have them do them of landscapes or something as someone else describes a landscape or a story setting. And this is important because it helps students visualize places and gives them a way to incorporate art as well. So you might want to focus on something like that. This is the activity we will do in class, so I won't go over that, but you can look at that book if you would like. Me on the Map by Joan Sweeney. It's really a great book. But there's all kinds of literature to teach mapping skills. So you can use a globe or a map to trace the journey of a character. You can use Google Lit Trips. You can use Google Treks, which you should have looked at already, and we'll talk about in class. But there's great books in the textbook. Another really fun activity is Flat Stanley, and this is a linked video to start out the whole Flat Stanley project. And really this is just about a boy who gets knocked over the head with a bulletin board, and he gets flattened to the thickness of a piece of paper, and so he gets mailed around the United States. And you can do that with your Flat Stanley character all your own. And students can do that and write about his journeys, and that's really fun to do. The next of the 6 elements that you should focus your units on are places and regions. And there's a connection and a relationship between these two things, because you're really talking about comparing and contrasting the different places. And the physical and the human characteristics of places. And so really we create these different regions as a way to organize ourselves or information. And so a way to teach about places and regions is just talking about what are the unifying characteristics of these different regions and why do people move there? What would be their different dreams or their desires when they move there? A really good unit is to talk about the Native American tribes, because they all had different places and regions within the United States that they lived, and then they actually had to move. There was a trail of tears as they traveled to Oklahoma in this new territory. And so you can talk about that, and it's a really great visual to be able to see the map like this and to see all the different regions. Another element of that's essential in geography that we don't always think of as being a social studies element are the physical systems, the different processes that the earth, that the atmosphere goes through as it reinvents the Earth's surface, really, and the patterns that are involved in that. So this is really an interdisciplinary unit between science and social studies, but it's very important because it really does affect the geography of the Earth. So, the first one is the atmosphere, where we talk about weather and climate, and you talk about hurricanes and tornadoes and all of those type of things, and those really do affect where people live and the different environmental factors of that. The lithosphere is the plate tectonics, erosion, soil formation. You can talk about, ecology and Earth Day and those type of things, taking care of the Earth. The hydrosphere is all about the water cycle and the oceans, and those are very, very important in science and social studies. And then the biosphere, which is where we live, and the plants and the animals and all of those things, and taking care of those. Those are really integral to talking about in geography units. So in the physical systems, you want to go beyond talking about daily weather, even though that's very important, especially starting kindergarten, charting the weather and talking about what you wear during different weather patterns and seasons and those type of things. Also, you want to talk about how climate and weather affect animals and humans and plants and our decisions on what to do and when. And a really neat activity is to chart the clouds. And I think it's 3rd grade where you talk about space and you talk about clouds and those type of things. There's lots of literature to incorporate there as well. And then the next essential element is human systems. And this one's really important, obviously, because and you can talk about this when I was showing that interactive map on National Geographic of the migration of human populations on top of the Earth's surface. Talk about why people settle where they do. Also, the westward expansion is an excellent unit to talk about during that involves human systems. So you can talk from this map, you can see, the different explorations and settlements and what happened during these different time periods. It's very important to see a visual of that, because students lots of times have problems with the past and really being able to connect with that. And the next one is environment and society, and this is all about Earth Day and how human actions have modified the physical environment and what we can do to make better decisions about the future. And that's very, very important. And the last thing is, why do we even need to learn about geography? And it's really about how do we use this information to apply and interpret the past. You can look back and see how the different movements of people and animals and climate has affected our decisions about where to live. Also, to help us with the present and then plan for the future. It's all about decision making and making good choices for not only ourselves, but our children, and also about our planet.